Have you ever looked at someone you love and felt deep in your gut that something had changed? Not dramatically, not overnight, but slowly, quietly. Maybe he started forgetting things. Maybe he began eating less. Maybe he stopped laughing at the things that once made him smile. He still says he's fine. He still gets up in the morning. But something about him feels distant, duller, slower, as if the light behind his eyes has dimmed just slightly. You tell yourself it's just part of aging. Everyone slows down eventually. Everyone withdraws a little with time. That's what we've been taught to believe. It's normal, they say. Nothing to worry about. But deep down, something in you isn't convinced. Something in you whispers, no, this is different. And maybe you feel helpless. Because how do you explain something you can't prove? How do you talk about what you sense when there are no symptoms to point to, no diagnosis to name? So you say nothing. You wait. You hope it passes. But what if waiting is exactly what we shouldn't be doing? What if the body doesn't give up all at once? What if it leaves clues, soft ones, subtle ones, months before life begins to close its final chapter? What if those little changes are actually silent cries for attention? Because here's the truth. Death, in old age, is rarely sudden. It's a process, a transition, a slow unraveling of systems, physical, emotional, and spiritual. And the problem is, most people miss the early signs, not because they don't care, but because they don't know what to look for. Today, that changes, because in this video, we're going to talk about the 5 silent signs that a man may be entering his final year of life. These are not dramatic, they are not loud, but they are real, and they are powerful. If you learn to see them, truly see them, you'll never look at aging the same way again. You'll understand that the end doesn't have to be a mystery. It can be met with clarity, with compassion, with love, and most importantly, with time to do what matters most before that time runs out. I'm Dr. James Carter, a senior wellness specialist with over 25 years of experience helping families navigate the final stages of life with grace, dignity, and emotional clarity. Throughout this journey, I've discovered that there are natural, accessible, and surprisingly effective ways to recognize and respond to the body's quiet signs, often more powerful than medication and free from the cost, confusion, or pain of medical interventions. Imagine knowing what's coming before it hits you. Imagine recognizing the early shifts in your father, your brother, your friend, and using that awareness to create space for meaning, peace, and presence. And yes, this is possible, even if you've missed signs before, even if you think it's too late. In this video, I'll walk you through 5 key signs that can help you identify when a man may be in his final year. And the 5th one may surprise you. It's something you can start observing tonight. Before we go on, if you value insight, emotional awareness, and grounded advice for aging well, subscribe and turn on notifications. This channel exists to bring light into the darker corners of aging, and your presence here matters. Also, let me ask you, have you ever noticed changes in someone, subtle, persistent, but couldn't explain them? Type yes if this has ever happened to you, or no if not yet. Your comment could help someone else realize they're not alone. Silent sign number 1, unintentional weight loss. Of all the signs that suggest a person may be in their final year of life, few are as overlooked or as misunderstood as unintentional weight loss. It slips in quietly, often unnoticed at first. A man who once filled out his shirts now seems swallowed by them. His belt, once snug, now needs new holes. You may see it in the arms, less firm, thinner than before, or in the face, cheeks hollowing slightly, jawline becoming sharper. And yet, no one says much, because in our society, weight loss is often celebrated, even in older adults. He's finally losing that belly. He looks great, doesn't he? But what they don't realize is that in aging men, especially when unintentional, weight loss is not a sign of health. It's often the first whisper of systemic decline. Why does this happen? It begins subtly. Maybe meals are skipped here and there, not out of choice, but because appetite is fading. Maybe food no longer smells the same. Tastes change. Digestive discomfort becomes more common, leading to avoidance. Or perhaps he simply forgets to eat, or eats less because chewing is harder, or food preparation feels like too much effort. Over time, this leads to a gradual reduction in caloric intake. But here's where it becomes more serious. In older adults, the body's metabolism shifts dramatically. Muscles become harder to maintain. Hormonal changes, especially reductions in testosterone and growth hormone, accelerate muscle loss, a condition known as sarcopenia. So when less food is consumed, the body doesn't burn fat first. It turns to muscle tissue. Vital muscle, the kind that supports posture, movement, circulation, and even respiratory strength. And as this tissue breaks down, so does resilience. What follows is a domino effect. Weakness increases. Balance is affected. Falls become more likely. The immune system becomes compromised. Healing slows, and fatigue sets in. It becomes harder to get out of a chair, harder to walk across the room. Even simple tasks begin to feel monumental. This is not just aging. This is the body, step by step, pulling back its resources, conserving energy for core functions, abandoning the periphery. It is, in many ways, a quiet withdrawal from life itself. There's also the emotional layer. When someone starts losing weight without meaning to, they often become more self-conscious. They may avoid mirrors, stop participating in group activities. They might not mention it, but they feel it. The frailty, the sense that something isn't right, even if no one said anything. And so the cycle deepens. Less eating leads to more weakness, which leads to less activity, less stimulation, and eventually, less life. Clinically, a loss of more than 5% of body weight in 6 months without clear cause is a red flag, especially in older men. It's a signal to look deeper, to ask questions, not just about diet, but about energy levels, appetite, digestion, memory, mood. Because weight loss is rarely just about weight. It is often a visible marker of invisible change. And yet, this is the sign most families miss. They're not trained to notice the small things, the loose wedding band, the shirt that doesn't quite fit, the way a once hearty appetite becomes hesitant. But when you see it, truly see it, you begin to understand that the body is speaking, softly, carefully, asking for attention. Recognizing this sign early gives you a rare opportunity to intervene with care, to slow the decline, or at the very least, to prepare. To sit with your loved one and ask, not just how much they're eating, but how they're feeling. To observe not just the plate, but the person behind it, their energy, their presence, their spark. Because when a man begins to lose weight without trying, he may also be losing something deeper: vitality, resilience, readiness to engage with life. And that change deserves to be seen, not with panic, but with love, with clarity, with presence. Silent sign number 2, withdrawing from social life. There's a certain kind of silence that doesn't come from peace, but from absence. It's not loud. It doesn't start with a fight or a declaration. It begins in quiet ways, subtle, almost unnoticeable at first. A phone call not returned, a family dinner skipped, a laugh that no longer comes, even when everyone else is laughing. It's easy to explain away. He's just tired. Maybe he needs rest. But over time, the pattern deepens. What was once a full life of connection begins to shrink. And that shrinking is one of the most powerful and most missed signs that someone may be nearing their final chapter. This isn't always sadness. It's not always depression, at least not in the clinical sense. What we're talking about is something deeper, a psychological withdrawal, a spiritual retreat. The soul, in its own quiet intelligence, begins turning inward, away from the distractions of daily life, away from responsibilities, away from obligations, and slowly, it starts closing doors. You might see it when a man stops going to his favorite coffee shop, when he no longer replies to messages from old friends, when he avoids group events he used to love, church, game night, weekend markets, Sunday family meals. He'll say he's just not in the mood, that he's fine, that he needs a little time alone. But that time grows longer, and the silence grows deeper. You'll also notice it in his conversations. He stops asking questions, stops making jokes, stops planning ahead. Future vacations, upcoming birthdays, family milestones. None of it seems to spark interest anymore. Instead, he speaks more about the past, or not at all. There's a subtle narrowing of time, the sense that the future has lost its color, its weight, its urgency. Why does this happen? Psychologically, nearing the end of life often brings a shift in how people relate to the world. As the body begins to slow, so does the desire for social stimulation. What once felt energizing now feels overwhelming. The noise, the conversation, the movement of life, it becomes too much, too fast, too far from where they now exist internally. There's a need for stillness, for simplicity, for retreat. From a neurological perspective, the brain may be reducing cognitive and emotional bandwidth. Memory processing slows. Decision-making becomes harder. Emotions become more intense or more numb. And instead of pushing through the overwhelm, the brain pulls back, chooses rest, solitude, reflection. Emotionally, this withdrawal may be a form of unconscious preparation. Just as animals seek solitude in their final days, some humans do the same, not because they don't love those around them, but because their instinct tells them this is the time to go inward, to detach, to prepare in silence. And yet, it's one of the most misinterpreted signs. Families might take it personally. He doesn't want to see us anymore. He must be angry with someone. But often that's not it at all. It's not rejection. It's surrender. Not out of despair, but out of intuition. His world is becoming smaller because something inside him knows it's time to let go of the outside. What can you do when you see this happening? First, don't rush in with force. Don't try to drag him out of the house. Instead, meet him in that quiet. Sit with him without needing him to talk. Offer presence, not pressure. Let your energy say, "I'm here," even if you don't want to speak. Because while the outside world may be fading from his view, your presence still matters deeply. Second, understand that withdrawal is not weakness. It is not failure. It is part of the process of release, a sacred, if difficult, transition. And when you honor it, when you witness it without fear, you give him permission to move through this phase with dignity and grace. Sometimes you don't need words to connect. Sometimes you just need stillness, a hand on his, a walk in silence, a chair beside his without expectation. These are the new conversations in this chapter of life, and they are no less meaningful. When a man begins withdrawing from the people and spaces he once loved, it's not the time to demand more of him. It's the time to love him more quietly, more patiently, and more fully than ever before. Because he may not say it aloud, but inside, he's beginning to say goodbye. Silent sign number 3, falls or loss of balance. There's a moment, quiet, quick, and often dismissed, when a man catches his foot on the edge of a rug and stumbles. He steadies himself on the table, smiles it off. "I'm fine." Another time, he misjudges a step going into the garden and grabs the door frame. "These shoes," he says, "they're getting old." But you see it, the hesitation, the way his eyes quickly scan the floor before he walks, the way he reaches for walls, countertops, chair backs. Not because he's clumsy, but because something inside him no longer trusts his body fully. Loss of balance isn't just about aging muscles. It's not just a weaker leg or a slower reflex. It's a breakdown in a system that once ran with seamless precision, a symphony of nerves, muscles, vision, the inner ear, and the brain, all communicating every second to keep the body upright. And when that system begins to fail, the result isn't just unsteadiness, it's a subtle cry for help. Most people think of falls as accidents, random, harmless. But in older men, especially those approaching the final stage of life, frequent stumbles are rarely coincidences. They're often the earliest visible signs of a deep neurological and physiological shift, a decline in coordination, reaction time, sensory input, and muscle integrity all at once. And the risk doesn't just lie in the fall itself. It lies in what the fall represents. Think of it like this. Balance is control. It's presence. It's connection to the world around you. When a man begins to fall, it means he's beginning to disconnect, not just from his environment, but from his own body. The communication between brain and body is no longer fluid. The pathways are slower. The muscles no longer respond with certainty. And even if he hasn't fallen yet, the micro adjustments you see, grabbing for furniture, slowing his pace, pausing before standing, are all signs that his internal systems are recalibrating, often without success. And then comes the fear. It arrives quietly. After 1 or 2 falls, something changes inside him. He moves less, avoids stares. He doesn't want to shower alone anymore. His world begins to shrink, not because of pain, but because of doubt. What if I fall again? Becomes an invisible weight he carries. That fear leads to even less movement, which weakens the body further, creating a cycle of decline that accelerates everything. There's also the emotional side no one talks about. A fall shatters confidence. It's humiliating, even when no one sees it. A man who once stood tall now feels uncertain in his own home. He second-guesses every step. He starts relying more on chairs, walls, routines. He may not say it, but it changes him. It affects how he sees himself, not as strong or capable, but as fragile. And for many men, that shift is devastating. So when you see the signs, when he avoids slippery floors, stops going for walks alone, starts turning down outings that involve too much standing, don't dismiss it. Don't say everyone trips sometimes. Look closer. This isn't just about a stumble. This is about what the stumble is trying to tell you. Clinically, Repeated falls in older adults are often associated with worsening neurological health, cardiovascular decline, and advanced muscle loss. But you don't need a doctor to notice what's changing. You just need to observe how he moves, how he hesitates, how often he steadies himself. These are signs that his body is losing its conversation with gravity, and that loss often means something much deeper. What can you do? Start with presence. Walk beside him. Don't correct or criticize, just support. Make spaces safer, yes, but also make him feel seen. Ask questions gently. Offer help without making him feel small. And most importantly, never brush off a fall. Even if it didn't leave a bruise or break a bone, it left something else, a message. Because when a man begins to fall more often, what's really falling may be more than just his body. It may be the last threads of certainty holding him upright in a world that suddenly feels unstable. Silent sign number 4, persistent, bone-deep fatigue. Not all fatigue is created equal. There's the tiredness you feel after a long day of work or a restless night's sleep, the kind that passes with a nap or disappears after a good meal. Then there's another kind, a fatigue that doesn't lift, that clings to the body like weight in the bones, a heaviness that isn't just physical, but total, complete, silent. This fatigue shows up without fanfare. It doesn't always come with sickness. It doesn't announce itself with pain, but it changes everything. The man who once got up before the sun now lingers in bed long after the morning light. The man who used to walk to the market now hesitates at the front door. He begins to break his day into pieces, shaving in the morning, resting, dressing, resting again. Meals become optional. Conversations become exhausting. Even the act of sitting upright for too long feels like too much. This isn't laziness. It's not giving up. It's the body shutting down slowly, reallocating energy to its core functions, heart, lungs, circulation, and pulling away from anything non-essential. Movement, conversation, curiosity, all of it starts to dim. The systems that once fueled engagement with the world now redirect themselves inward. Biologically, this is often caused by a combination of failing mitochondrial energy production, lower oxygenation, nutritional deficiencies, muscle loss, and inflammatory processes that silently spread across the body in late-stage aging. The body is working harder just to maintain basic function, so it doesn't have anything left to spare. Emotionally, this fatigue becomes isolating. It's hard to explain to loved ones. He may say, "I'm just tired," or "I didn't sleep well," even when he slept for 10 hours. And if you don't listen carefully, you'll miss the truth behind the words. He's not just tired, he's depleted. His energy reservoir isn't low, it's dry. And this kind of fatigue comes with its own kind of grief. The grief of lost ability, lost momentum, lost self. A man who once took pride in his strength now struggles to carry a bag of groceries. A man who once led conversations now grows quiet mid-sentence. There's shame in that. Even if he doesn't name it, he feels it. In his body, in his identity. You'll see it in the way he moves, slowly, hesitantly, as if every action requires permission from his muscles. You'll hear it in his voice, quieter, flatter, lacking the energy to animate emotions. You'll see it in his posture, shoulders hunched not from sadness, but from the sheer weight of staying upright. Even moments of joy, time with grandchildren, a favorite meal, a good story, seem to lose their brightness. Not because he doesn't care, but because his body doesn't have the capacity to match the moment. He may smile, but it's tired. He may nod, but it's slow. It's not that he isn't present. It's that presence has become effortful. What makes this sign so dangerous is how easy it is to normalize. We tell ourselves, of course he's tired, he's getting older. But this isn't normal aging. This is progressive internal withdrawal. This is energy being drawn back into the body like a tide, receding slowly, silently, leaving less and less behind. So what can you do? First, don't push. Don't try to force activity. Don't treat fatigue as something to fix or snap out of. Instead, observe. Be close. Create space for rest without isolation. Offer help not as correction, but as compassion. Sometimes, the most powerful gift you can give is to let someone move slowly, without judgment. Second, take this fatigue seriously. If you start to see consistent, unexplained exhaustion, especially if it affects speech, appetite, interest, or responsiveness, it may be time to ask deeper questions. Fatigue this deep is not just about sleep, it's about life force. And when that fades, it's one of the clearest signs that the body is entering its final phase. Because when a man stops moving, not just his body but his spirit, it's not always because he wants to rest. Sometimes, it's because he knows. His energy now belongs elsewhere. Silent sign number 5, subtle changes in breathing. There's a rhythm to life that most of us never notice until it changes. It's the quiet inhale and exhale that carries us through every hour, every day, every year. It happens beneath the surface, invisible, automatic, until it doesn't. The 5th sign, a subtle shifting pattern in breathing, is perhaps the most overlooked of all. It doesn't come with flashing alarms or sudden collapse. It comes in whispers, in pauses, in the space between one breath and the next. And for those nearing the final stages of life, this change is not just physiological, it's symbolic. You may notice that he breathes more shallowly than before, that when he speaks, he runs out of air more quickly, that walking from one room to another now leaves him a little winded. He may stop in the middle of a sentence, not because he's forgotten his thought, but because his lungs simply need to catch up. Then one night you hear it, something different. A pause between breaths, a soft wheezing sound, maybe a gentle snore that was never there before, or a sudden sharp breath, followed by silence. You may brush it off as normal snoring or age-related changes, but what you're hearing is the body adjusting its rhythm, preparing slowly and silently for stillness. There's even a name for it in medical literature, Cheney-Stokes respiration, a distinct breathing pattern where breaths become increasingly deep, then fade into shallowness, then pause altogether for a few seconds. It's not painful. It's not always obvious. But when it appears, it's often a marker of advanced heart or neurological decline, a quiet signal that the body is no longer operating with the same automatic ease it once did. But even without Cheney-Stokes, the changes are real. Breathing becomes irregular. Sometimes it speeds up for no reason. Sometimes it slows down during rest. You may notice he sighs more often, or he begins to avoid long conversations, not because he doesn't want to talk, but because talking takes effort he can no longer spare. And there's something else. The voice itself may change. It becomes softer, less projected. The sentences become shorter, not because the mind can't find the words, but because the lungs can't carry them. What causes these shifts? Part of it is muscular. As the diaphragm weakens and chest muscles lose tone, breathing becomes more labored. Part of it is neurological. The brain's automatic regulation of breath begins to falter, especially during sleep. And part of it is systemic. The heart isn't pumping blood as efficiently, the oxygenation of the body is reduced, and the entire respiratory system begins to move, slower. But beyond the biology is the symbolism. Breath is life. The first thing we do when we're born is inhale, and the last thing we do when we die is exhale. So when the breath begins to change, subtly, softly, steadily, it often reflects a turning point, a shift not just in body, but in being. It's as if the body, in its wisdom, knows it is approaching a natural ending and begins to rehearse stillness. This is the sign few people catch in time. It doesn't scream, it doesn't demand, it only asks to be noticed. And when you do, everything slows down. Time feels heavier, moments feel more fragile, and you begin to understand the sacred weight of simply breathing. What should you do? First, listen. Don't just hear, listen. To the rhythm, the pauses, the way he inhales after speaking. Notice the sighs, the shortness, the moments where breath fails to arrive on time. These are not just quirks, they're messages. Second, be present. You don't need to fix the breath. You don't need to change it. Sometimes, what matters most is that someone else is there, breathing beside him. Because when breath begins to shift, the body is whispering its final poem, a soft exit, not yet taken, but being written. And in that space, between one breath and the next, there is a world of meaning. Remember, none of these signs are about panic. They're about presence, recognition. They're not signs of failure, they're signs of transition. And when you recognize them, you have a chance to respond, not with medical panic, but with human care. Everything I've shared is grounded, simple, and deeply natural. It doesn't require labs or scans. It requires attention, soft eyes, listening. Start small. Watch one sign. Ask one question. Start one conversation. You don't need to change everything. Just be available. Consistency matters more than perfection. You might not see huge results at first, but you will notice the subtle changes. A more open moment, a longer hug, a softer smile. That's what awareness brings. If this video helped you see things more clearly, share it. Someone else may need this today more than you know. And if you want to keep learning how to walk these paths with strength, wisdom, and grace, subscribe now and turn on the bell. Because death may come quietly, but when we meet it with love and truth, it becomes something sacred